Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Dayton and Paul as usual. It's been a few weeks. We just went through Christmas and New Year's and all that. Paul and Dayton, how were your guys' holiday season?
Great. Yeah, it was nice to get away from a little bit and just focus on World Juniors.
For sure,
Yeah,
you were quite busy.
I really was. Yeah. Yeah, made it work though. It was a lot of fun.
Good. And Paul, how are you?
Oh, good. I didn't get any coal, so that's a good thing. So, hey, so how many games did you guys cover? Dayton with the juniors?
Um, like what do you mean with
Well,
cover?
like how many articles did you pump out on that tournament?
Ooh, most games had, well, every game I think had a recap.
Yeah. Huh.
So however many of those there are. And then we had a takeaway for at least all the big teams. I think
Yeah.
takeaways for Finland, Sweden, US, and Canada had that pretty consistent. And then a couple of features throughout the tournament as well. I had at least two articles I wrote outside of the main things. So yeah, it was a bunch, probably two to three per. No, that's underselling it. Like five a day, probably.
Busy crew.
Yeah, they did awesome. Lots
Hmm.
of really, really good writers, good hard workers there. It made things really easy. Flowed really
Yeah,
nice.
so it's good to have all that World Junior content. If you're interested at all, you can go back and read all of it. I mean, the World Juniors is over, so I'm not sure how much retroactive um, reading you're going to do on it, but it was all fantastic content and great team of writers headed by Dayton. So great work on that.
Thank you.
Here.
The Ottawa Senators fall to the Detroit Red Wings, 3-2 in overtime. I don't know if either of you watched the game. It was a good game by Ottawa. The officiating was very suspect on both sides. There were a lot of like the first penalty Ottawa took from Brady Tkachuk was just terrible. Um, on the officials' part, not Brady. But it like so many things went uncalled both ways
Yeah.
that you can't even be upset about it. Um, Anton Forsberg looked good. I thought Nicholas Matenpalo looked great. Shabbat looked good. Sanderson looked good. Everybody looked pretty good. I'd like to see a bit more out of Tim Stützle, but did either of you get a chance to watch?
Yeah, I did. And yeah, I agree with you. The officiating was spotty until it got really tight and severe in overtime. And I'd argue that penalty they called probably cost Ottawa the game. And I don't know, from my perspective, it's probably something that you should let go at that point in the game. But they didn't. They got quite strict.
Yeah. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Sider that got by Sanderson.
Yeah.
And Sanderson got his stick up in the hands of Sider, which that's a penalty. It's a hooking penalty. But what got the penalty called was Sider falling, which had absolutely nothing to do with what Sanderson was doing. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not upset about that being called. But I don't know. Just the whole game was frustrating to watch based on the officials. And of course, yeah, Jake Sanderson. That's only his third penalty this season. Hard to really get mad at his level of discipline. He's been a pretty good boy this year, especially with. Um, but yeah, it led to the overtime goal by Patrick Kane. So I don't know. It was a good game. You lose some games that you play well. If you told me coming into this 9 game road trip that Ottawa would come out with 9 points, more than happy to see that. Obviously, the uh, the playoff race is getting pretty tight. We're going to talk about that later, but yeah. Any other takeaways from the game there, Paul?
Well, I think, this was a game. They really needed the 2 points. I mean, you're talking about it. This playoff race is so tight now, and it's only going to get tighter. Um, with the 2 points, they could have got pushed Detroit down in the standings, but and made up some ground on Montreal, but they didn't do that tonight. But hey, they got a point. Um, one of the big takeaways I have is Forsberg. he looked good tonight. And if he could play like that every night, Ottawa no longer has a goaltending problem. He's good enough that they can ride him, and goaltending won't be a negative. But it's just consistency. Hopefully, I don't know if those goaltenders, Merrillainen and Forsberg, perhaps they're in a situation or they'll rise to the occasion and say, we're going to take control of this and give the team the goaltending that they need until Ullmark gets back. Hopefully that's the case. The other thing I noticed, takeaway for me was Stützle's. Well, he surfaced. He'd been nowhere to be seen for 3 games. I didn't even, apparently he didn't get a shot in the last 3 games, so he's got a point tonight. And Tkachuk scored. If you look at their play in the last number of games, 5 games, that's been the problem with the team is their top six just hasn't been producing. They've gone cold. So hopefully they come alive here tonight.
Yeah, I agree. Stützle has been invisible for the last few games. Did show up tonight, mostly in the third period. I think he got all 4 of his shots tonight in the third period. He picked up an assist. He looked good in the second half of the game. Um, and same with Brady Tkachuk. After taking those 2 penalties in the first period, I was quite happy with kind of the rest of his game.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say anybody on Ottawa had a bad game at all. It was just a really good game for both teams. Um, and Ottawa just couldn't take advantage of some of their opportunities. So, and
Yeah.
Forsberg kept them in.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a real playoff feel about it. So, they hung in there.
Yeah, for sure. Did you get a chance to watch?
I tried. Gotta love the regional blackouts.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to.
I downloaded a VPN, so I set my location to Toronto, so I can get around that. It's ridiculous, especially like Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan, and neither of us can watch an Ottawa Senators game.
God forbid. God forbid.
Yeah.
I just can't
Um,
figure out the rationale for those regional blockages. It just doesn't make any sense. But
No.
See, I understand it when it became a thing 10 years ago because this contract um, for the broadcast was signed in 2013, so now 12 years ago. Um, and streaming wasn't as big as before, so it really encouraged people to watch on their local broadcasts, which that was what most people did anyway. So I understood it. I understand it in terms of when it was signed, but nowadays, like it's pointless. And I don't expect it to be in the um next broadcast contract, which fingers crossed goes to Amazon. That's my prediction. Um but yeah, I don't know. The whole point of it was to put butts in seats. The people in Ottawa to go to a game instead of sitting at home and watching it on something, or if they are, at least they're going to watch the regional broadcast. That's not working. People like it's almost a vacation to go to a hockey game now. At the least, if you and your wife are going to a game, or you and your son, or you whoever, it's going to cost you at the very minimum $85 in tickets. And then if you want a hot dog, a beer, a hamburger, whatever you want, that's another 40-50 bucks each. So it's a mini vacation to go to a hockey game. So
oh yeah, it's 250, $300.
yeah. And even for junior hockey, like Dayton, I know you go to a lot of games. You're credentialed now, but like you go to a game without credentials and it's even still then it's $100 and
With somebody,
at
yeah.
least.
Yeah, 100
Yeah.
bucks.
Yeah.
50 bucks on tickets for most of the places I've gone to anyways. And then yeah, you're probably spending 10 bucks, 15 bucks per person on food.
Yeah.
I save on the beer costs. I don't partake, so
Yeah.
yeah. And right now
It's
it's purely financial. It's expensive.
yeah. It's ridiculous the cost of hockey, but um at least in Ottawa they can't sell out the building most of the time, so the tickets are pretty cheap. So if you ever want to go to a Senators game, there's a good chance you can.
What's it like going to a Halifax game?
Parking is the biggest problem.
Oh, yeah.
It's like there's a parking lot. It's like a 2 minute walk down the street, but it was like $23 or something for me to park for a game.
Oh, that's
Um,
disgusting.
Yeah, and then I mean, when you're credentialed, sometimes they bring out some stuff for you, like some water and whatever. But like if you're going as a fan, like concessions aren't too bad in Halifax, but they're certainly not cheap. Um it's even like even here you're spending 100 bucks to go for two people.
Buddy of
So
mine saw a game down in Toronto last weekend. $20 a beer.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, don't spill any.
No, don't. Well, it's like the guy sitting at the front in the Red Wings, sitting against the glass for the Red, in Little Caesars Arena. He got his beer spilt, and saw a lot of people on Twitter saying like, I don't know why anybody would put their beer on the glass when it's this expensive
No, two hands on your beer.
at all times. Yes, 10 and 2. You can't let go. All right. So we'll move on. Paul, you touched on this a little bit with the goaltending issues, and I see that you're going to be writing something about this in the coming days. But
Yeah.
where does the Ottawa Senators go from here? So they've got Forsberg, who has struggled since the beginning of last season. You've got Meriläinen, who's hot and cold in his very short time in Ottawa. A couple names that have been thrown out there: Alex Lyon, who Ottawa just faced, and he went out with an injury, so maybe not anymore. John Gibson, Alexander Georgiev, Dan Vladar. Um, there's a few other names out there um, that could be thought of. Paul, what do you do at this point? I mean, I know we've had this conversation before, but now Ottawa's in more of a dire situation, and something like this seems a bit more realistic than the last time we talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the view in Ottawa is that Staios has to at least try to do something. He can't let the season slip away because of goaltending. That said, okay, what does he do? This is the real world. It's not fantasy hockey. And as we discussed, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, there's just not a lot of options that he has. There's not a lot of talent out there. There's some, but his options here are limited. I think the best case scenario is if somehow between Maryland and Forsberg, they can raise their game and they can ride those two goalies, as I've said before, until uh, Allmark is back. But but that said, there's a fairly long list of goalies they could look at.
Yeah, that's fair. So, are you team stick with what you have, or do you think they should acquire someone?
Well, I don't know. Let's roll the dice, try and acquire somebody. Going through the list, John Gibson comes up, but look, he's $6.4 million, 6.4 million. So that's going to be a very difficult trade to engineer. He's the Ducks would want to get rid of him apparently because they want to go into a rebuild. So I don't know what you've got to send back the other way. Picks, prospects, young guns. He could be an expensive acquisition. And at 31, he's probably only got a few years left. So if you did a deal like that, would you be jeopardizing, the long-term prospects of a playoff run, a playoff success, and eventually a Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I'll give my thoughts on Gibson in a minute. But Dayton, what do you think? Where should the Senators sit with their goaltending?
Yeah, it's a little tricky. Allmark is week to week, right?
Yeah.
Uh, have they given him
It's
any
he
sort of?
was Travis Green said he's week to week, and that's just him saying like, here's something to say. He hasn't started skating yet, is all we really know. It sounded more like he'll be ready when he's ready. And he's already been out 2.5 weeks, so
Yeah, I could see him missing maybe 2 more weeks.
yeah,
Um, Beyond a month, I think you probably want to throw someone like that on IR just to get that cap relief because he's got an expensive contract. Um, if that's the case, then yeah, go ahead and get somebody. You have a little bit of that relief, and that opens up some things where you don't have to make the other team retain a ton of cap. And that's the problem with Gibson is you need the Ducks to retain probably at least half of it. which is a massive chunk and not something I don't think they want to do. It's only 3 more years, which isn't crazy. Um, but yeah, like otherwise you're having to move over $6 million, and the Senators don't have that to move.
Yeah.
Like Forsberg only makes under three, so that's less than half. Where's where's the rest coming from? Zub, he's got a big contract. Norris, he's got a big contract. Are you moving either of those right now? I don't think so. You moving Giroux right now? I don't think so. It's someone's got to go somewhere, and I just don't see anyone leaving on Ottawa. So unless Allmark is on IR, I don't think they're going after really anyone because the goalies available right now aren't the most economical, I don't think. You're not finding some some diamond in the rough with a really cheap contract.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's some low budget options. I threw them on my list. It'd be, really quickly, James Reimer, Buffalo. Hey, we saw an option tonight, didn't we? Cam Talbot, a blast from the past. He's only $1 million. He makes the same salary as Forsberg. Jake Allen, Carol, I'll mess the pronunciation of his name up. Vejmelka in Utah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I don't know. There's some people there that could fit under the budget cap, and they may put you in terms of performance stats. They may put you a little ahead of where Forsberg is.
Yeah,
Vamelka
my
isn't.
biggest thing, Vejmelka is really interesting. I think Utah's still in the playoff race, and I don't think they want to move on from Vejmelka or Ingram right now. But if they do, certainly keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ottawa does have more cap space than it seems at the moment. Because you look at it right now, they have Perron on LTIR. That is what it is right now. You have Michael Amadio on IR. You have Travis Hamonic on IR, and you have Jacob Bernard Docker on IR, and you have Linus Ullmark on IR. So that's five players on IR that their cap isn't being negated by like LTIR, so that's still counting against the salary cap. So then you have all the players up um, that are replacing them. So any of Zach Ostapchuk, Ian Yannick, Cole Reinhardt, Maxence Gannett, Nicholas Matin-Paolo, all these guys like so they're and Levi Miralainen, they're all counting against the salary cap right now. So that's another couple $1 million, probably $2 million or so.
Mm.
So if you take the 890,000 or whatever Ottawa has, then yeah, another 2 million. And if you're moving Anton Forsberg in a trade for another goalie, they do have the salary to make something like John Gibson work. So at with retained salary, I think John
Flexible.
Gibson is the way to go because he's having a really good season this year. He's got a 914 save percentage in 14 games. The only thing that I would say is that your issue is you're worried about Olmark being injured. John Gibson is injured a lot as well. And that's the only concern that I would have. Um, but with that being said, last three seasons in a row, he's played at least 40 games, and he's on track to play about 30, 32, 33 this season. So I don't know.
The only thing
I think it
with
makes sense though. If you can get John Gibson for $4 million for the next two seasons, I'm fine with paying the what is it, 8.25 for Allmark and then another four for Gibson, so 12.25 million. I'm fine with that for your goaltenders because these are two goalies that have proven that they can be very good. Um, and if that's what it's going to cost you to have strong goaltending, that's what it's going to cost you.
The only thing with Gibson, though, is the question will be, will he come? And my understanding is that he's really looking to go to a Stanley Cup winner now. He's getting on in years. So I the rumor has it he's kicking tires in Edmonton, but who knows? Maybe Ottawa. Maybe I'm making the case here that Ottawa is a tougher sell than it really would be for him.
Yeah, and I mean he's only got a 10 team no trade clause, Most players will have Ottawa, but there's no guarantee. So,
Mm.
yeah. All right. Any final thoughts? Any final ideas or anything you want to send over to Steve Staios to try and solve the goaltending situation?
I think at this time with Allmark, you know, excuse me, expected to return, let's say within the next couple of weeks. I wouldn't rush the gun. He's your guy. Is Gibson going to want to be a backup? Doubtful. 1A, 1B? Maybe. But I think they have a 1A, 1B right now. And you don't want two band-aids playing, most of your minutes because then you're going to need a third guy who's going to have to fill in for them regularly.
Yeah, but they
So
kind of already have two Band-Aids, and
I
one of them just
know
isn't good. So now you're gonna have two
Forsberg at
Band-Aids
least
that they're
isn't,
both pretty good.
yeah, Forsberg isn't injured as much. So he's like a little band-aid.
I think over the last 3 seasons, Forsberg has missed more time than Gibson.
Has he?
I think so.
I'm
Because you
missing.
look at the double knee injury that he had, and
Oh,
then
that's
he missed other time with a couple other things. I don't know. And then John Gibson's missed the past like 3 or 4 games just because he's really sick or something. So bit of a caveat on that, but
yeah,
still, health is an asset.
that's a good point. Keep
Yeah.
forgetting how many in the Senators have dealt with over the last couple of seasons.
Well, a couple
It's
years ago they used 8 goalies in the same season.
Mhm.
That's insane.
I don't know. I still wouldn't rush it. I think they have something that works right now. And if you have to go back and add somebody, yeah, you've got a little bit of time to figure that out.
All right, that's fair. So speaking of all of the injuries, and we already mentioned a few of these names, Cole Reinhardt, Levi Merilainen, Zach Ostapchuk, Jan Yannick, Maxence Gwinnett, and Nicholas Matin-Pallo are all on the roster as of today. That's almost a third of the Belleville Senators up in Ottawa, including at one point both of Belleville's goalies, and then both of Belleville's or the ECHL goalies playing in Belleville were both injured. So then they needed like Ottawa's organization was down like 6 goalies at one point. Um, so who? Two questions: Who has impressed you the most out of this group of players? Um, some of them haven't even played. So like Maxence Gwinnett hasn't played very much. Ian Yannick only played 1 game. Cole Reinhardt and Zach Ostapchuk have played a few. Matt and Paolo's played two. And Miralinen's played 3.5. So who's impressed you the most so far, Dayton?
Ooh, it's a good question. I think I'm going to go with Merilainen. He's a solid young goalie, still developing, still getting his feet under him. But he's come in and done pretty well with, a pretty big task in front of him. He managed to secure his first wins of his career, um, which is that, that's pretty big. Good for him. Glad that could happen. Uh, just pulling up some stats here. He's had a couple of, rougher showings, but still, like his last game, which was on January 2nd, he stopped 21 of 25 shots. That's pretty solid, right? It's tough to win with 4 goals against, but um, it's uh, it's definitely not the worst. And for somebody coming up to fill in a really big, he's got giant shoes to fill. Allmark was playing fantastic before his injury. I think he's done as good as could be expected.
That's fair. Paul, who has impressed you the most so far?
Well, I agree with Dayton on Maryland. You know, the kid's 22. He was tapped. He's not ready for the NHL, but nevertheless, he stood tall in the net. You know, he's got what is it, 2 wins, 2 losses under his belt, and you know, in his losses, you know what, they were respectable. You know, he went down to the Oilers 3-1 and to the best team in the league, the Jets 4-2. So nothing to apologize there for. Um, and then I guess for me, the other guy would be Manton Palo. I thought he looked good to, particularly tonight. You know, he did what he had to do, kept it simple, um, and I think he's probably earning the trust of Green based on what I've seen.
Yeah, I quite liked what Matt and Paolo had to do tonight. He had a shot on goal. He had 2 blocks. He had a takeaway, 14 minutes, which is pretty good. considering I think last game he only had 10. So
Mhm.
bit of extra ice time, and the Senators looked better tonight than they did in their last game. So yeah, I quite like what Matt and Paolo um, had to do. Oh, sorry, his last game was against Minnesota, where Ottawa was actually really good. Um, but yeah, Ottawa or Matt and Paolo looks pretty good with Ottawa. He looked really good with Clevin too. They're both big bodies. They're both pretty physical. So hard to be upset with Matt and Paolo, and he's coming in big shoes to fill with Hamonic out of the lineup, and he's done a great job.
He's a right shot defenseman. The other right shot defenseman that I'd like to get a look at, of course, is Gwinnett. I thought he made the club after the training camp in 2023, but they sent him down. I guess it was a crowded blue line. This year, believe he had a good camp. So, I think this will be a real opportunity for him, assuming he gets the call. Well, they brought him up, right? So he's going to see some action. But it's a good opportunity for him to play onto the roster and maybe show management where he belongs.
Yeah, for sure. So who are you most excited to see more of? Might be the same answer, might not be. Paul, is it gonna be Matt and Paolo? Is it gonna be somebody else?
Gwinnett, I'm going to stick with him. I'd really like a closer look at him. He's only had 8 games in the NHL, but so far everything I've seen of him, he's impressed.
Yeah, he's pretty good. Quiet guy, which is a good thing. He has some offensive instinct, but pretty good on both sides of the puck. Dayton, are you gonna stick with Mira Line and see a few more games at him?
I would love to see a few more games at him. I'm really excited to see what Cole Reinhardt can do with a bit more responsibility. He's been incredible in the minors this year so far. I did not see this coming. I thought he was going to be like career minor leaguer, 40, 50 points maybe. He's a point per game guy. He is lighting it up whenever he goes down there. Then he gets called up regularly. I think he's one of the Senators' top guys to call right now. Um, the last few games haven't been maybe as smooth as his first few, but I think given a little bit more familiarity with how the Senators play and working with Green and the guys on his line, yeah, I think he could emerge into a really solid fourth line guy. The Senators have been really good at developing those guys in the past. I'm thinking like Parker Kelly. I'm thinking like Mark Kostelek. Those have been really solid fourth line players, and Cole Reinhardt could be the next in that line.
Hey, he even
Yeah,
dropped the gloves against St. Louis the other night. So
There you go.
multi-talented guy.
yeah, I like Reinhardt too.
He's a
I'm a little
Western kid.
upset. I'm a little upset that we haven't seen Angus Crookshank this season.
Yeah.
He's not having a great season in the AHL, but I really thought that he was going to be a player, but
Hmm.
doesn't look like it at this point. 25 years old, 16 points in 29 games. I don't know. Um,
Yeah, really streaky.
yeah. Well, you look at last season and the one before that, he had 46 and 47 points um, in 121 combined games. So that's pretty good production. So, but
Well,
just not translating this year.
how would he fit in place of a Stopchuk?
I think it would be more so like Reinhardt that he would replace. I think he's like a faster, more offensively talented player than Reinhardt. They both have that gritty style, but Reinhardt just I think the defensive play from Reinhardt is what's keeping him up over Crookshank.
But I mean, the thing that bothers me about a Stopchuk is what's he 24 games and 2 points, I believe.
I
That's it,
think it's 32 games,
is it?
tw 25 this season, 32 career games,
Right.
and he's got 3 assists, no goals. I
Wow.
like what Ostapchuk brings. He brings some good physicality. He brings some good he brings a lot of really good things. And he's only 21 years old. So I'll give him some more time. The fact that he's even playing in the NHL right now, um, and fitting in is a really good thing. I think the
Mhm.
offense will come. Dayton, I already asked you about your who you're excited to see more of.
Hmm.
But the wild card race is getting very tight in the Eastern Conference. It's ridiculous right now. I'm just gonna pull it up as of right now. So there's a couple games going on, so things could change. But right now, it's for the wild card at least. It's Tampa Bay. Columbus is actually sitting in a wild card spot right now. Um, Pittsburgh, Ottawa, Montreal, Detroit, Philadelphia, New York Rangers, New York Islanders, and Buffalo Sabres. So from the first wild card to 16th, so that's 10 teams, is only separated by 9 points, which is insane. Realistically, I think from Tampa Bay until the Rangers have a chance of getting in. But then, like you look at it, the Islanders are only 1 point back of the Rangers. So it's incredibly tight in the East. Boston's not looking great. They could certainly fall out of um, the divisional spot in the Atlantic Division. How do you see things shaping up for the wild card race? Who do you see making it? Who do you see just barely missing, and who do you see kind of falling off for the rest of the season?
Ooh, that is a good question. Well, I don't believe in the Bruins. Stumbled on that then. I think they are on their way out. I think they probably missed the playoffs this year. Um, or they'll slip into a wild card spot and give that top three spot to someone else. Um, yeah, I just think they don't have it this year. And they've been doing okay, but it's not the same. It just hasn't been there. Pittsburgh has been really all over the place. Columbus has looked strong. Tampa's always a threat. Um, but you know what? I'm going to play the homer card. I think you see Ottawa crawl into there, especially if Allmark comes back within the next little bit. If they do have goalie issues, I have no confidence in any of my answers. But no, I do think Ottawa crawls in there. Um, who else? I think Tampa probably gets in there. But maybe Tampa upsets Boston. And you know what? Let's say Columbus. So the two wild cards for me will be Columbus and Ottawa, with the top three being Toronto, Florida, and Boston or not Boston, Tampa in the Atlantic.
That's very fun. I like that. That's a chaos answer. Paul, who do you have? I guess for third in the Atlantic and the two wild card spots, because first and second in the Atlantic, and then the top three in the Metro are pretty well cemented at this point. They have a 5 or 6 point lead on anybody else, even coming close to them. So third in the Atlantic, and then the wild card spots.
I've got Tampa in third. I've got Montreal and Pittsburgh in the wild card.
Fair enough. You know what really upsets me this season? How likable the Montreal Canadiens are. And I never thought I would say that in my entire life. But I've been quite enjoying what Montreal's doing. I like watching Caden Gooley. Lane Hudson has been insane. Patrick Laine, incredible story. Nick Suzuki, I've gotten fantasy. This Jacob Dobesh I'm not, I might be mispronouncing that.
Whatever.
Um, I know that there's been a few different pronunciations going on, but like all these guys, they have such great storylines, and then they're on a heater right now. They're 8-2-0 in their last 10. I do think that they're gonna fall off. I do think they'll fall out of the race pretty soon. I don't think this is sustainable at all. They're just kind of running on ethanol and vibes right now. Um, but I would have to agree. Tampa Bay is going to take the third in the Atlantic. I don't think anybody's really arguing that. They have 5 games in hand on Boston and only 1 point behind. I think Ottawa does make a wild card spot. Ottawa has games in hand in everybody in the East except for Tampa Bay. And right now, catching Tampa Bay isn't a huge concern. It's going to be worrying about Boston and then the rest of the wild card race. I think Tampa's pretty well cemented in that top three. Um, so I'm going to go Ottawa, and I am going to go Detroit. That game tonight, I really liked what I saw from Detroit. I didn't like it because they were playing against Ottawa, but in terms of like how they were playing and performing, I'm going to give it to them, which means we all have the New York Rangers missing the playoffs, and that's weird. They won the President's Trophy last year. We thought they were going to be cup contenders this year, and here we have them all halfway through the season going to miss the playoffs. They're on track to. They're third last in the East, one of the worst teams in the league. That's weird. Any other thoughts on kind of this wild card race or anything? Any teams surprising you outside of Montreal and Columbus?
Not really surprised. I mean, the thing is with Ottawa. there's no doubt they've got a shot. They have to be one of the teams that odds makers, if you were one, would be assigning reasonable odds of making a wild card spot. The problem, well, it's not the problem, it's just reality in the league. You're really going to start to see competition. Teams are going to take it to another gear. And then the question is, we talked about this a few weeks ago, is Ottawa the real deal? I said, give me to the end of January. Now I'm saying, give me till the start of the Four Nations face-off, because if you think it's tight now, it's only going to get tighter for that wild card spot. And there's just so many things that have to come together. And so it'll be really tight for Ottawa to win a wild card spot. They're in
At,
contention, but they've got to stay with it. They've got to stay in contention. You got
at
to
this
keep.
point, we might as well just give you until the start of the playoffs to choose which side of the fence you're on. No, but I'm with you though. Like they're right there, and so many teams are right there that it's just any of these teams can just take that big step forward. So, if you look at the goal differentials, which is a huge tell of how good a team really is, I mean, obviously it's not a perfect stat or anything. So if we switch Tampa and Boston and put Tampa in the top of the Atlantic, and have Boston down in the wild card, every single team in the wild card race has a negative goal differential except for Ottawa. Ottawa's even at zero. Actually, I don't think this is updated for tonight. So Ottawa will be a -1. So every team in the wild card race, if you swap Tampa and Boston, is has a negative goal differential, with Ottawa's being the best of the bunch. So I do think that that is a very important factor. Ottawa is scoring goals and doing a good job of suppressing them, especially through that month of December. It was insane. So yeah, it's Ottawa's been one of the better teams in this wild card race for sure.
Mhm. The East have a wild group of goal differentials, though.
Yeah.
Like Boston has a -24 right now, not updated for tonight. I can't remember if they played a game or not.
So they'll
Uh,
be -28. They lost 4-0 to Edmonton.
all right.
Yeah.
No, it's not there this year. The Penguins are a -28 right now, before any sort of games. Um, and like those two are within wild card striking distance, right? You go over to the West, the only -20s or greater are the bottom three of the conference, which is Nashville, San Jose, and Chicago. Everyone else has more than a -20 differential.
And Nashville is the only team in the league without 100 goals yet.
Oh, yeah, yikes. Yeah, talking about surprising.
Yeah.
Nashville Predators.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the whole West is kind of surprising right now. Like, who had Colorado and Vancouver fighting for the wild card spots?
That's true. Yep.
Like, yeah.
But
Um,
it's very close for a top three position for the Avs and you know, getting into that central. I think they're
yeah,
tied
for
with
sure.
Dallas.
Okay, so is it more surprising that Dallas would be in a wild card spot? Like, the West is just such chaos, and I love it so much.
Yeah, it's always a tight race though, isn't it?
Yeah. And then the East is always just battle of the mediocre for the most part. It's every team is in it because no team is really taking that big step.
Yeah.
All I can say, Jacob, is enjoy your hate mail from all the Habs fans after you trash the Habs here on this show.
I
Maybe
said I like them. I said they're likable. They're gonna be loving me. They'll send me Valentine's cards next month.
I'll
All
take
right,
any
so
hate mail from the Bruins.
yeah, I will too. I mean, everything from the Bruins is hate mail.
Yeah.
All right, so that'll wrap things up for today. We're running at about time, so I appreciate everybody for coming to watch and let us know your thoughts. Who do you think is going to be ending up in a wild card position at the end of the season? I mean, we're only halfway through the season, so anything can change. But as of right now, it couldn't be tighter, really. So Paul, Dayton, thanks for joining me as usual, and we'll see you all next week.